Hello and welcome. I'm Wise Old Tree, and this is a review of Dimension 20, Season 18, Dungeons and Drag Queens. Starting with an overview, Dungeons and Drag Queens is a live play D&D series produced by Dropout and released in summer of 2023. It's a 4-episode miniseries, with episodes averaging just over 2 hours apiece. Brennan Lee Mulligan is the game master for the season, and the players are drag media personalities: Monet Exchange, Alaska Thunderfuck, Bob the Drag Queen, and Jujubee. The PCs travel to the underworld to have their wishes granted, although the focus this season seems to be less on the specific setting and more on the cast of drag stars playing a game of Dungeons & Dragons for the first time. Each of them is perhaps most notable for appearances in RuPaul's Drag Race, although they collectively have assorted other media projects and appearances. For my overall impressions, well, for this season, I feel the need to clarify my perspective. I'm not someone who watches or has sought out drag media content. I've heard of RuPaul's Drag Race, but never watched it. So when this series came out, I assumed it wasn't for me. So when I watched it for the first time to make this review, I went in with the knowledge that a lot of people like this season. Chief among them is Dropout itself, which wanted to submit the season for an Emmy only to find it wasn't eligible. I say all that because I feel I can't really judge the drag aspects of the series, instead only evaluating it from the perspective of story narrative, which uses the D&D system as the game foundation. The series name doesn't give me much to go on other than the cast is drag stars playing D&D, and the trailer doesn't help as much as I hoped it would in regards to answering my first question going into this season. What actually happens in this series? What's the story, the tone, the genre? Starstruck is obviously sci-fi. Coffin Run is vampires. Pirates is, pirates. But I'm just not really sure what this season is. So now, having seen the season, the best I can describe the setting of Dungeons and Drag Queens is like an adventure module you might buy if you don't have the time or the experience to create your own campaign. The PCs meet in an inn, travel to a temple, and then delve into the underworld in search of having their wishes granted. Brennan is able to spice up the narrative by incorporating players' stories, kind of like a professional chef making great meals from basic tools and ingredients. But the underlying story this season is still something that feels like it's designed as a starter box adventure made to teach people how to play the game. Which maybe is appropriate because all of the players this season are new to playing Dungeons & Dragons. But it also means that the setting is as close to generic D&D setting that any season of Dimension 20 has ever done. The players give some fun performances, even with all of the players this season being new to the game, but the standout for me is Twyla, played by Jujubee. Twyla is a fairy ranger, and she's fine, but in this case I have more to say about the player. Jujubee embraces the confusion, awkwardness, and struggles that come from learning a game system, and does so in a way that is both relatable and entertaining. I like people who are willing to admit that they don't know something and ask. especially because there will be audience members wanting to learn along with the players, but which I'm sure is hard to do when the cameras are rolling on you. Jujubee is a great conduit for learning this season, and even as someone who's fairly familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, I really appreciate that. As for a rating, I'm going to give Season 18 of Dimension 20 Dungeons and Drag Queens a 3 out of 5. The players are entertaining, and it's interesting to see Brennan work with a cast of entirely new players. Although I do prefer the table dynamic from a mix of newer and more experienced players in that regard. The story is fun, although it leans into generic D&D aesthetic for the setting instead of something more vibrant and personable that a lot of other Dimension 20 seasons are, but at least the season delivers in character focus pretty well. I didn't come away from this season thinking that this is the height of D&D storytelling, but I did have a good time. More than I was expecting, honestly. If you're like me and you skipped this season because you're interested in D&D but not drag, I think you'll find that there's still enough in this short season to take the time to watch and enjoy. All right, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and see you next time for Season 19, Mentopolis.